Next, let's talk about NavMesh Links. So in this scene, I have a little castle under the name of Castle Ruins. So we can click on that and hit F to focus. So our castle ruins here are set to static, which means that they're part of the nav mesh that we built before. And it looks pretty good, except that there's a few areas that you can't actually get to. So I think you should be able to jump from here to here and jump even up here and up here. The way I'm going to force that to happen is with a NavMesh link. So to create one, I'm going to click Game Object, AI, NavMesh Link. Now I'm going to click Inspector so I can see what's going on here, but we have a little guy, so he's going over the NavMesh link, and we've got 2 points that we can assign. So I want to first link right across here. So I'll just Control-Shift drag this to this, set it in the middle, and then put each one of those positions right there. Then I can just move the whole thing and kind of refine it. Now, as far as the options, you can define your own start point and end point. You can switch them back and forth. We have a width modifier that I'm going to use here, which just means they can enter from here or from here. It doesn't have to be right in the center. Also, there's a cost modifier where you can make something cost more or less. Then we have an option for auto update position. You need to enable this if you want to move the off-mesh link at all. We have bidirectional, which means that the agent can cross from one side and then back to the other side. And we also have an area type. We can set it to jump, which might cost a little bit more than walkable. So let's duplicate this nav mesh so we can jump down or up these columns if we want. Hit Control D, and let's move approximately between the first 2 places. Now we can jump down here automatically, but you can't jump back up. So let's make this the first point. Control-Shift drag, and Control-Shift drag the other side. If the path is blue, then the off-mesh link is valid. But if it goes clear, then it's not valid anymore. So make sure they're all blue. Release. Now let's Control-D, move it down approximately halfway, Control-Shift drag, and Control-Shift drag. Now it's blue, so we're good. Control-D. And let's move this one a little closer to here. Now Control-D one more time. Let's put this spot here and this one over here. Let's test it out. Awesome, so he can go, well, he can go all the way down there if he wants to, but he can go here. That is the new NavMesh link. There's also a legacy off-mesh link, which works a little bit differently. I'll show you how just in case. First, let's create an empty. Control-Shift drag it to where we want to start. And let's add a off-mesh link. Then let's create an empty child and make this the destination. Name this destination. Now Control-Shift drag to the landing point. And then you can assign the game object itself and the destination to the start and end points. Let's call this off-mesh link. Now we can Control-D to duplicate and Control-Shift drag. And then also move the destination of this with Control-Shift drag. Then we can duplicate, Control-Shift-Drag to here. Take the destination. And it's already kind of at the right place, but we'll duplicate this one and move it. And the destination we will put here. Now this I feel like is a little bit faster to work with, but the drawback is there's no good way to visualize what's actually going on like we have here. We do have the off-mesh links drawn here like we're used to. However, it's just not exactly clear compared to the rest of them. But let's give both sides a try and see how they do, side by side. All right, so the legacy off-mesh links seem to be doing just fine. Now let's see how the new off-mesh link system works. Seems to be doing just fine as well. But it is very important that you know how to use both of them, at least for the time being, until it gets replaced. Now that we know how to use off-mesh links, I'm going to show you a really cool way to use them with NavMesh surfaces. Let's open up our surfaced scene we made earlier. Let's duplicate our plane. Duplicating a NavMesh surface does not duplicate the NavMesh data. We're going to need to go to the inspector and bake it again. Now let's create an empty child of the plane and an empty child on the other plane. Let's add a component, off-mesh link, and select the game object as 1 and select the other as the end. And let's push play. So they can travel across, but we can also rotate them like before. And this is something you absolutely cannot do without the NavMesh components system. And those are the off-mesh links. In this module, we covered the NavMesh building components, including the NavMesh surface, where we build and modify custom NavMeshes at runtime, the NavMesh modifier, where we change how NavMesh objects behave with the hierarchy, the NavMesh modifier volume, where we can change how NavMesh objects behave but within a volume, and NavMesh links, where we connect unwalkable parts of the NavMesh. In this course, we covered NavMesh baking, where we learned how to build NavMeshes out of scene geometry. The NavMesh agent, we gave it parabolic jumping and waypoint patrolling. We also learned advanced AI, such as enemy eyesight, tracking, and memory. We also covered NavMesh obstacles, where we learned to block our agents with obstacles, and agents recalculate a path with carving. NavMesh areas, where we define higher and lower cost areas and give agents a preference. Finally, we covered the NavMesh building components, including the NavMesh surface, the NavMesh modifier and modifier volume, and NavMesh links. Thank you for tuning in to Unity Navigation Fundamentals. I'm Dan Ocablamo, and thanks for learning with me today.